1996 Everest Mountain Disaster. As the harrowing events unfolded on Mount Everest during May 10, 1996, a snowstorm trapped 8 climbers on their descent, leading to their untimely deaths. Throughout the entire climbing season, a total of 12 individuals lost their lives attempting to summit Everest. This catastrophe garnered widespread public attention and sparked debates about the commercialization of Everest climbing. The victims of this disaster were members of 2 separate commercial expeditions, both attempting to reach the summit at the same time and in fierce competition. The incident shed light on the lack of experience among some climbers, with accounts in Jon Krakauer's book Into Thin Air revealing that some of them didn't even know how to use crampons. The primary cause of this tragedy stemmed from the rivalry between the 2 commercial expeditions. If one company successfully guided its clients to the summit while the other failed, it could result in a catastrophic loss for the unsuccessful company, affecting its future business prospects. Despite having experienced climbers as leaders and all the conditions necessitating a turnaround decision, both leaders decided to push on towards the summit. Now, let's delve into the details of the events. In their personal lives, Rob Hall, a New Zealander, and Scott Fisher, an American, were close friends. However, in their professional lives, they were rival climbers and the leaders of 2 competing commercial expeditions, Rob Hall's Adventure Consultants and Scott Fisher's Mountain Madness. On May 9th, both teams arrived at Camp 4, where a 13-member Taiwanese team was also present, making it a crowded campsite. Due to time constraints, the 2 commercial expeditions decided to join forces and aim to reach the summit by 2 p.m. Climbing beyond this time would make a safe descent almost impossible. Those who couldn't reach the summit by 2 p.m. would have to turn back to Camp 4. On May 10th, shortly after midnight, Adventure Consultants' team set off toward the summit from Camp 4 at 7,900 meters. They were followed by the smaller Mountain Madness team with only 6 clients remaining, since 2 members had to descend due to altitude sickness. Lastly, the Taiwanese team also began their ascent towards the summit. The first significant delay occurred at the balcony, located at 8,350 meters. There were no fixed ropes, and the guides had to install them, causing a delay of about 1 hour. Further complications arose at Hillary Step at 8,760 meters, where they discovered the absence of fixed ropes. Installing the ropes here caused a substantial time loss. Moreover, 33 climbers were stuck on a single fixed rope on the narrow Hillary Step, causing further delays as they waited for each other. The combined effect of these delays proved to be disastrous. On July 13th, the first person to reach the summit was Mountain Madness guide Anatoly Bukriv. He accomplished this feat without supplemental oxygen and spent approximately 1.5 hours at the summit, assisting others before starting his descent to Camp 4 at 2:30 p.m. By that time, only Martin Adams and Clev Schoening from the Mountain Madness team had reached the summit. After 2:30 p.m., Serdar and Angdorje Sherpa from the Adventure Consultants team, along with Sherpas from the other team, reached the summit and began their descent at 3 p.m. At 3 p.m., Jon Krakauer noted that the weather started to deteriorate, and by 3:10 p.m. it was clear that bad weather had set in. During the descent, Angdorje encountered Doug Hansen just above Hillary Step and advised him to turn back and descend. However, Hansen didn't respond. At that moment, Rob Hall arrived at the scene, instructed the Sherpas to help the other clients below, and asked Doug Hansen to wait where he was while Hall continued toward the summit. Scott Fisher had not reached the summit by 3:45 p.m. He was exhausted and in dire condition, but he continued climbing. The exact time of his summit remains unknown. At 5 p.m., Anatoly Bukriv arrived at Camp 4. Despite being a guide, his decision not to assist other climbers during his ascent, and knowing that he would spend hours without oxygen in the death zone, sparked significant criticism. Worsening weather conditions made the descent challenging for climbers. Fixed ropes were buried in snow, and visibility was severely limited. The temperature also plummeted rapidly. At 8,350 meters, Lopsang Jangbu Sherpa encountered Scott Fisher, who was in poor condition and unable to descend. At that moment, the Taiwanese team arrived, and their team members Makalu Gao struggled on the descent. They left Gao with Fisher and Lopsang, while the Taiwanese continued their descent. At 5:30 p.m., Rob Hall radioed for help, stating that Doug Hansen had fallen and was unconscious but still alive. As Harris was on his way to reach them, Hansen had already died. Hall also mentioned that Harris was missing and that his oxygen bottle had frozen, rendering it unusable. Around noon, Rob Hall attempted to establish radio contact with his wife. After saying, "Sleep well, my sweetheart. Please don't worry too much," the radio connection was lost. His body was found on May 23rd. The bodies of Doug Hansen and Andy Harris were never recovered. Stuart Hutchison, who was part of Rob Hall's team but decided to forego reaching the summit on May 10th, initiated a second rescue attempt. They found Yasuka Namba and Beck Weathers. Both were completely frozen and unconscious, but still alive. They decided to leave them in the wilderness as they believed their chances of survival were slim. Transporting them to Camp 4 was difficult, and evacuating Camp 4 itself was challenging due to the injured climbers. However, something incredible happened. Beck Weathers managed to stand up somehow and walked all the way to Camp 4. On May 11th at 7 p.m., they reached Scott Fisher and Makalu Gao. Fisher had already passed away, but Gao was airlifted to safety. When Beck Weathers' tent was blown away in the storm that night, he reached the brink of freezing again. Despite all the first aid efforts made on May 12th morning, he showed no signs of life, and they almost left him behind. However, when journalist John Krakauer noticed signs of life, he was brought down to Camp 2 and evacuated from there by helicopter. This disaster stands as a stark reminder that the mountains cannot be taken lightly. If they had followed their own rule of turning back if they couldn't reach the summit by 2 p.m., perhaps all of them would still be alive. Commercial interests and the obsession with reaching the summit led to a significant mountaineering tragedy. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more content, you can subscribe and support me. Take care and stay safe.